this is why the states have to actually create laws similar to what Senator Eigel put in to the gold and silver bill, basically to just make civil asset forfeiture illegal in your state.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and this is the Miles Franklin Weekly Special for October 23rd through October 30th, 2023, while supplies last. This week we feature 3 different specials. 1 10th-ounce Gold Philharmonics at $30 over melt with a minimum order of 5. Half-ounce silver polar bears at $2.75 over melt with a minimum order of 100. And 1-ounce platinum maples at $80 over spot. The Austrian Philharmonic is the most popular bullion coin in Europe, and the gold 1 10th-ounce Philharmonic offers additional flexibility along with investor trust. With your order of 5 or more, you pay only $30 over melt. Next, the Royal Canadian Mint is one of the most trusted mints in the world, and the half-ounce polar bear is one of their most popular Call of the Wild coins. 1/2 ounce of 4/9 fine silver, it's available at just $2.75 over melt per coin with a minimum order of 100. Also from the Royal Canadian Mint, we have the 1-ounce platinum maple at just $80 over spot. Many consider platinum to be a highly undervalued metal at the moment, since over the last 30 years, platinum has generally been significantly more expensive than gold, but currently sits at less than half the spot price. Best of all, the 1-ounce platinum maple is just $80 over spot, giving you access to a premier coin in a premier metal at one of the lowest prices in 20 years. All of our specials this week are IRA eligible. And if you'd like to learn more about a precious metals IRA, call us and we'll be happy to help you in that process. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're delighted to have this returning guest. Patrick Holland is the organizer of the Missouri Freedom Initiative at mofree.org. He joins us again this Friday, October 27, 2023. Patrick, thanks for coming back on Liberty and Finance.
Duncan, thank you so much for having me back. It's a pleasure.
When we've had you the first couple of times on our channel, you spoke with us about a growing movement across many states. I think it's 14 and counting, but it depends what threshold you count. States that are making significant headway towards creating legal tender laws on real precious money, depositories in some cases, etc., making sure that they remove sales taxes on precious metals, things that are moving back to constitutional type sovereignty of the states and of real sound money currency that can protect their citizens from federal overreach and mismanagement, frankly, of our financial lives. We wanted to follow up with you on any additional progress that's being made there and remind people how they can encourage that to happen in their state, but also to get an update from you on a phenomenon that's very concerning on the part of many freedom-minded individuals, and that's what they've been hearing more and more about, such as the loss of private property rights or the diminishment of private property rights in many jurisdictions, including such things as concern over potential confiscation of precious metals or civil asset forfeiture. Even when people are talking about picking up their precious metals at a dealer and driving it back home, or dropping them off at a vault for deposit, that sort of thing, they're concerned what might happen to them if they were to get stopped along the way and questioned and found to be in possession of real money, and that it might be construed as something only criminals do those sort of things. Therefore, we're going to have to confiscate this as evidence or whatever until further notice. We've heard some stories of that happening in different states. Wondering what the Missouri Freedom Initiative's awareness is of private property laws or civil asset forfeiture concerns, and what is being done about it, what the problem looks like it's shaping up as, and what people can do about it.
Okay, gotcha. There's a whole bunch in that, so there's stuff to unpack there. But first off, I wanted to let you know that Senator Eigel has already prepared the bill for 2024, and that's a long story. I don't think I got into a lot of detail, but our 2023 bill to get silver and gold as legal tender did not complete the process in the state of Missouri. And I think I've talked about that. One man, Dean Plocker, actually stopped that. He's under investigation by the FBI right now, by the way. He happens to be the Speaker of the House of Missouri. And there's an ethics committee hearing going on right now as we're doing this interview in the state of Missouri, possibly concerning him as well. Okay, but going back to the bill, Senator Eigel is a pretty sharp guy. And he understands the whole thing with confiscation because it did happen, when FDR was president. And it happened illegally, once again, by an executive order, by not going through Congress. So Senator Eigel actually put a very interesting 10th Amendment component in our bill, which you can find at mofree.org in our forums. You can find it pretty easily there. So mofree.org, you can actually download a copy of the rough draft of our bill, which I just got from Senator Eigel a couple of weeks ago. And in that bill, he literally says in there that gold and silver cannot be confiscated without due process, period. And if the federal government comes in to confiscate gold and silver, that it is, basically illegal for them to do so, and that they cannot get any help from anyone in Missouri to do it. So they can't get intel, they can't get law enforcement to help them, they can't get prosecutors or courts to help them. So a very strong 10th Amendment component has been included in the bill. And this is what other states will have to do when it comes to confiscation of gold and silver, is actually make the laws refusing resources of your state to the federal government to confiscate, and making it illegal to confiscate by the state itself without due process. So that answers that question, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of examples in the last couple of years in particular, but perhaps spanning decades, where things that sound like they're being presented as virtuous on the part of government or the power structure in general, talking about this is for the good of public safety, or this is to eliminate criminal activity and that sort of thing. This is to fight terrorism. This is to fight the drug trafficking or whatever. And if you look on the surface, gosh, it sounds like, yeah, they're fighting things that shouldn't be happening, so we want to support those. And you look at it and say a little deeper and say, wait a minute, these are stripping away privacy or stripping away freedom that's been there since the dawn of time, if you look at natural law, but since the beginning of our country, and especially some of these things are enshrined in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. You're specifically referencing the 10th Amendment. Can you talk to us about what are the fundamental principles that are at risk here and that we need to be supporting?
Okay. And once again, that's a great question. It goes into 9th and 10th Amendments. What we do as a state in Missouri, and we've done with the Second Amendment Preservation Act we talked before, is by literally using the 10th Amendment as was given to us by the Founding Fathers to protect our state from overreach from the federal government by refusing the federal government use of our resources. They can't use our law enforcement. They can't use our courts. They can't use intel from anyone to do what they want to do. Now, we can't stop the Fed, but what we can do is refuse them the resources. Well, the fact of the matter is the federal government doesn't have the resources to do these things without help from the states. So it's an excellent tool. So Ninth Amendment is personal rights. And then, of course, that goes into everything. And what is not specifically enumerated as the responsibility of the federal government falls on the 9th and 10th Amendments, either personal rights that you and I have as individuals, sovereign individuals, natural law stuff, or to the states themselves. So this is the overreach that we see constantly. And to your point, there is an enormous amount of our rights that are being taken away from us constantly all the time. And it seems innocuous in its legislation that's going through your states or through D.C. And people have to fight this. This is the whole purpose of our organization, is to preserve our freedoms and to get those that have been somewhat muted actually taken back completely. So this is the point of what we do in the Missouri Freedom Initiative. But you're right. This is a very serious problem in the United States, and people don't immediately recognize it when it's in small chunks over a long period of time. And so this is the reason why we have to be very, very wary of any legislation that gets plunked down on a senator or representative's desk at 1 o'clock in the morning, and they have to vote on it at 8 o'clock in the morning. And that's become ever since 9/11. Before 9/11, that never happened. So we have to be wary of this, but you have to be wary on a state level as well, not just the federal level.
Speaking of 9/11, we interviewed Daniel McAdams from the Ron Paul Institute, and his quote from that interview with him on our channel is that the Patriot Act, he says, is the cancer in our common body politic. It's basically a glowing example that has almost become, as you mentioned, like the template for which our constitutional rights and natural law, liberties, etc., have been abridged, infringed, abrogated, whatever, all in the name of public safety or national security, that sort of thing. You can justify a lot of horrible things in the name of national security or public safety, and you don't have to look very far back into the 20th century to see regimes that did just that. And we look back and shake our heads and say, how could that have ever happened? How could an intelligent, free people ever allowed that kind of dictatorial, fascist control to take root in what had previously been a free society? And I think that could never happen here. And then when you see it happening, and it's been basically like a steamroller since 2001, that people have to open their eyes, wake up, realize there are steps to the slippery slope, and you do need to resist each and every one of them. Can you readdress that topic with us about, you mentioned no state resources in Missouri would be able to be employed by or used or leveraged by federal authorities trying to seize like precious metals, for example. That prohibition on seizure of precious metals only apply to federal seizure of them, or is it also within state jurisdictions as well?
For the federal side, it simply says that no state resources can help the Fed seize gold and silver from private citizens. On the state side, it says that you can't seize gold and silver without due process. So that gets into civil asset forfeiture done again. I don't want to get too technical, but what often happens with law enforcement is they suspect you of a crime, they charge you of a crime, and then they take your stuff. And then that stuff, gets taken and lost or sold or what have you. So due process means that you have to go through the court process before they can start taking your stuff. You have to go finish that court process. So you have to be, not only charged with a crime, but convicted of a crime before they can go after your stuff. And that way, civil asset forfeiture doesn't come into play when it comes to gold and silver. Senator Eigel thought this one through. It's very well written.
Excellent. And I guess related to this is the specter of loss of illegal search and seizure we've seen happening over and over again, where the norm has shifted from you have to have a specific court order from a judge to with the warrant to be able to go in and search and look for specific items and take specific items, rather than just having a SWAT team of FBI agents descend and take everything that's not nailed down and looking for something and trying to find evidence on computers or whatever. So any further thoughts on that from a general freedom standpoint, not just related to precious metals, but as far as illegal search and seizure versus protection of personal property and privacy?
Yeah, that's a continuous problem that we face in the states. The federal government, along with the ATF, and I'm sure with other agencies like the Treasury, IRS, which is, part of the Treasury, does this sort of thing all the time. And this is why the states have to actually create laws similar to what Senator Eigel put in to the gold and silver bill, basically to just make civil asset forfeiture illegal in your state. That is the best way to go. You don't even need a gold and silver bill to do it. You can do it by simply putting an anti-civil asset forfeiture bill forth in your state General Assembly and actually get that through the process. Now, law enforcement hates that because they make money off of it, Dunnigan. They make money off of civil asset forfeiture. They do. And in fact, when it comes to gun law, enforcing federal gun law, and I have more to say about SEPA here. There's updates on that, by the way. But when it came to SEPA, what we did is we stopped all civil asset forfeiture having to do with firearms in our Second Amendment Preservation Act law. So what that meant is, basically civil asset forfeiture, when working with the ATF using federal charge codes, the state would be able to keep 80% of whatever they seized, and the federal government would get 20%. That would be their cut. And that's been stopped in the state of Missouri. For the time being anyway. I do want to give you guys an update real quick about SEPA, because some of you have been following that. And the Eighth Circuit has determined that SEPA, the Second Amendment Preservation Act, is unconstitutional.
The Constitution itself is unconstitutional. Okay.
Well, that's interesting when you have a federal court, telling a state what its rights are, particularly when the Constitution, because they're using the Supremacy Clause, but the Supremacy Clause only has to do with laws that have to do with the federal government. It does nothing to do with the Second Amendment, because the Constitution says the government has nothing to do with the Second Amendment. It's a natural right, and it's reflected, of course, in the Declaration of Independence, the inalienable rights that we all have. And then they're enumerated in the first 10 amendments. And it's a surprising thing. However, because there's a one-page decision that was put out by the Supreme Court, and Kavanaugh and Thomas both put a statement in there that makes me think that SEPA is at least partially still in effect right now. And my understanding is in December we'll be in front of the Eighth Circuit, and if they keep their decision, we're going to the Supreme Court. And this law was written for Supreme Court, literally scrutiny. It was written for that. I know the guy who wrote the bill. So we're ready to go to the Supreme Court on this. And trust me, the federal government doesn't want us going to the Supreme Court. And again, because then states will find out how Missouri did it, how we did it, how we got it accomplished, and then they're going to want it too. Now, most states do have SEPA, but they don't have the enforcement mechanism that we did. That's why the federal government only came after us.
This is an important point, and I'm glad you focused it that way and framed it that way, is when you're standing on solid ground, you invite inspection. You're glad and welcome for the chance to defend that position, because the more publicity, the more notoriety, the more light that is brought. There's so much about the swamp that's shady and dark, and I think you called it squishy in the past, that a lot of things can happen under the cover and covertly and everything, but when it's forced out into the light and people see the evidence that's being discussed and presented, it's a very effective way of communicating to others, to reigniting that flame, that passion for freedom in their hearts and in their minds, and that can be a very effective way of spreading an important message, is to have it attacked by the authorities, so that in defending it, you get to make the case for it to many. And unfortunately, a lot of that gets spun. There's lovely choice words like extremism and whatever, dangerous or whatever, that get thrown out there when it's even covered in the mainstream press. And maybe that's something else you could talk with us here, since you're joining us on independent media, how you have experienced it for the Missouri Freedom Initiative standpoint, as you're moving forward on things for the good of the people of Missouri, and therefore setting an example and helping to communicate the templates by which you can that can be modeled by other states around the world, around the country, for the good of all people of the United States. What kind of influence you've seen, positive or negative, from either independent media or mainstream media in that fight that you've been waging?
That's an excellent question. Actually, I've got lots of fun answers, and I could probably filibuster you for the next 2 hours on that with all the data I have. But that's a very good question. And when it came to the Second Amendment Preservation Act, remember now, I told you that was an 8-year battle here in Missouri to get that done. And all the mainstream media had negative press on it. That's it. There was nothing positive in the mainstream press. I think there might have been one neutral story in 8 years. One neutral, everything else negative. All the positive stuff was in alternative media. Guns and Gadgets carried that quite a bit, as a matter of fact. Many other outlets did. But I think when it comes to silver and gold, once again, absolutely no mainstream coverage on it, except for the stuff that came out from the 10th Amendment Center. Mike Mahari had a lot of contacts and ended up going into Zero Hedge. So we actually got mentioned in Zero Hedge on that gold and silver bill in 2023 that Senator Eigel, had filed. So we did get a little bit of attention that way. But once again, when it comes to actually securing the money supply in a state, there's a lot of interest against it, but it's on the Federal Reserve side. And once again, we're not trying to get rid of the dollar. We just want there to be a viable alternative to the dollar. That's all we want. And it's promised to us in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10. Anyone can read it. It is there for us, and nothing officially takes it away, except for literally businesses, that won't take it for transactions, and states that won't accept it for the form of payment of taxes. That's what you're trying to clear when you go for legal tender law in your state. That's what you bring in. And that's how you get there. And trust me, if something like this gets passed, it'll go into the mainstream media, but it'll be all negative. It's that's the way they do it.
You mentioned legal tender. That's becoming more and more talked about in circles of sound money enthusiasts. For the longest time, and even today, I'll get calls from precious metals clients who say, well, after all, gold is gold or silver is silver, therefore I'll just get the least expensive bars or rounds or whatever. And others who say, I believe that it's going to make all the difference if push comes to shove, whether what you're holding in your hand personally is legal tender or not, and whether it can be taken away from you. Is there any distinction made in the Missouri Freedom Initiative's proposed legislation on relating to civil asset forfeiture, et cetera, that makes any distinction between legal tender forms of gold and silver, in other words, government-issued coins, versus bars, rounds, et cetera?
Not really, because coins of the realm, although they're very distinctive, we have the silver eagle here. Canada has the maple, Britannia, in Britain, the kookaburra. We could go on and on with this, but it's about weight, purity, spot, and of course the market premium. That's the distinction. Coins of the realm, unfortunately, the premiums they have on coins of the realm wouldn't even come into play in this regard. But remember now, coins of the realm have a dollar amount stamped on them that are significantly lower than the spot price even, of the coin itself. And so we could do the silver eagle, we could do the gold eagle on that. Was that $50 on the gold eagle?
Yep.
Yeah, that's not a good deal. Not for us. I do have a quick story. And by the way, this is true story. Great Southern Bank is a regional bank in my area. And I asked them one time, basically if they would take gold for payment. And so this was a branch manager. And they said, oh, of course we would. I said, oh, that's interesting. How much do you pay for gold? And they said, well, we only take gold eagles and we'll give you $50 for it. And so I said, okay, cool. Can I have every single gold eagle you have in your safe? I will pay cash right now. And she says, well, we only have a couple. And I said, well, that's cool. I got $100. I'll be more than happy to take those off your hands. She goes, no, those are $2,000 each. No kidding. This was last year. No kidding. And this is my bank. This is the bank that I do business with. If anyone wants to test that, I encourage you to go to your local bank and see if they're the same way. But at any rate, the banks understand the value of gold and silver too. But of course, banks don't want to pay full retail. It's certainly not full spot. They want to pay what the coin of the realm is stamped, that's stamped on the coin of the realm, which is $50 on the gold eagle. That's what they're willing to pay for it.
Well, we're going to need to circle back with you more on some of these topics, because as things move forward, there are going to be many, many other states that are trying to follow Missouri's lead in terms of establishing the legal tender laws, as far as removing the sales tax from precious metals, as far as trying to set up a state depository, et cetera. Some states are even considering, I've understood, minting. So that's going to be an interesting development to get. If you have progress notes on that to share in the future, we'll be eager to hear more about that. For states and people living in those states who want to benefit from the vanguard that Missouri is serving as, to lead the charge here, where can they get resources that will help them influence their local elected representatives to move forward in their own states?
Excellent question. Right now, what we can provide is a rough draft of the silver and gold bill as it is right now. It's not totally finished, but it's good enough. And that's right at our website, mofree.org. In our forums, you'll see gold and silver. And if you just click on that, we have very little stuff going on our forums right now. It's easy to find. You can actually download a copy of Senator Eigel's rough draft for the silver and gold bill for 2024. So other people in other states, feel free to rip off our work. There's no copyrights on anything. In fact, this is the way it works between states. Dunnigan, you're in Ohio. If you have a really good bill in Ohio, it gets ripped off by other states. They borrow the language and they institute it in their state as a bill. So at any rate, I want people to know that there's no problems with taking our bill, bringing it to your senator, your representative, and say, here you go, remake this for our state. I want to put in a plea to those states. I think there's 8 states right now that have sales tax on precious metals, on gold and silver. Get rid of that sales tax first, if you have that in your state. That must go first. It's very difficult to get legislation like you're about to download from our forums done without getting rid of that sales tax, and that sales tax must go. I can't believe other states are still doing that. And Mississippi, of course, got rid of theirs this year. So congratulations to Mississippi. And
previously Tennessee, Arkansas, Ohio, just a couple years ago. So they're seeing the light. They're coming from the dark side to the light side, and you're part of that. We'd like to be part of it too. People go to mofree.org, mofree.org. You'll find all the resources that Patrick is describing there. Patrick Holland from Missouri Freedom Initiative, thank you for joining us on Liberty and Finance.
And thank you. If I can mention one more thing, I may have mentioned this on the last show, but it's a continuing problem. I think I mentioned on your show that we have nationwide a ton of school districts that are trying to max out their bond capacity in a foul swoop, either in November, coming up on the 7th, or in April of 2024 with a bond issuance. And I want to make people aware this is a nationwide program. We're going to be putting out more videos about this too. So if those of you who are, concerned about the rising cost of living, should be very concerned about no tax increase bond issues where you can't get out of debt in your school district because they keep forwarding all this debt on you. So please be wary of that. And we're putting out a lot of data on that. And we mostly cover Missouri in that regard, but other states are doing it too. They're all doing it. So everyone, and I don't like to tell people how to vote. So I'm not going to come on here and say, vote down any bond issue. That's not what I do. If you need a bond for your state, the school building is old, in disrepair, collapsing, the kids need to be safe. I get that. But if they're looking for extras, I would strongly consider your options on when you go into the ballot box. November 7th is a voting time in Iowa. We have it in Missouri. Many states are doing November 7th. Those that don't are probably doing it in April of 2024. So everyone be on the lookout for that. And then also one more thing I want to mention. I'll tell you what, I'll get you in touch with Senator Bill Eigel. And see if, basically you guys can connect and you can talk to the man himself who has been leading the charge for silver and gold for the entire nation for 2 years now.
He'd be very welcome on our channel, and I'm sure our viewers and subscribers would be delighted to hear from him.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, well, thank you once again for having me on, Dunnigan.
Thank you, Patrick. Take care.
You too. God bless.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us, discuss your needs, and we can let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Kaiser, my brother Elijah, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.